Hi, welcome back to a new video. Now I've had the new Raspberry Pi 5 for a few weeks now, and I thought I would do a video to show you around the new board and compare it to the Raspberry Pi 4 board. I'm going to connect up the Pi 5 and install everything ready for use, and finally I'll share my thoughts on it at the end. So let's get started. So this is the new Raspberry Pi 5 board. So if we have a look, it does look very similar at first glance to most Raspberry Pis. This side you can see a couple of micro HDMI ports as on the Pi 4, and on the underside you can see the micro SD card slot. If we turn it to this side you can see the Ethernet port, a couple of USB 2 ports and a couple of USB 3 ports. We can also see the new custom RP1 I/O controller that provides the Raspberry Pi 5 with USB and gigabit Ethernet, amongst other things. This is custom made for the Raspberry Pi 5. We can also see on this close-up the fan connector. Under this heatsink is the new processor. It's a quad-core 64-bit ARM processor clocked at 2.4 GHz. And this is a completely new addition to the Raspberry 5 range. It's a PCI Express 2.0 connector. And I'm sure there'll be lots of interesting peripherals coming out for this as time goes on. So let's put it side by side with the Raspberry Pi 4 8GB model. And as you can see, the obvious difference, and that's that the USB and Ethernet ports are flipped. So you can see the Ethernet on the Pi 4 here versus the Ethernet on the Pi 5 here. So let's take a look at the new Raspberry Pi 5 case with built-in cooling fan. So this case comes with 3 plastic parts and a built-in cooling fan here. The cooling fan connects directly to the new fan connector on the Raspberry Pi 5 board, and it's using the cables here that you can see. So let's get the Raspberry Pi 5 into the new case. So as you can see, the base plate has some rubber feet on the bottom and some ventilation holes and cutouts for our ports. So we'll take the Pi 5 board and this simply drops into place like this. Now we'll close up so we can see the next part being connected. So as you can see, inserting the fan connector is a little tricky and a bit fiddly, but not super difficult. And now we just slot it in at this side and push it down and it should click into place. Now with the main case assembled and the fan connected, we can just simply push the top plate into place. We don't have to keep the plate on if we don't want, we can take it off and it will provide additional airflow if we do. Now to use our new Raspberry Pi 5, we need to prepare a MicroSD card to use with it. Now the simplest method to do this is to use the official Raspberry Pi 5 Imager application. It's available for Windows, Mac and Linux. Now as I'm currently using a Windows desktop, we're going to install the Windows version. However, the installation on all platforms is very straightforward, and once installed, the application looks and works exactly the same on all platforms. So as you can see, we're on the Raspberry Pi website, so we're going to go here and click on software, and then we'll scroll down a little, and what we will find is the download for the Raspberry Pi Imager. So we're going to take the Windows version, but you select the one that you're using. So click on here. So now we should be able to go to our downloads folder and see that we've now got the Raspberry Pi Imager installer ready to install. So we're going to do that now. So what we need to do is double click on this file here and then run through the installation. So the first thing we need to do is click yes on the user account control message. On this window, we need to click install to start the installation. And when we click finish, the Raspberry Pi Imager will start for the first time. So I'll click finish. So after a few moments, the Raspberry Pi Imager application should load. So I'll full screen it here and you can see a bit better. So as I said, all platforms, the Raspberry Pi image application looks exactly the same. So if you're running it on Windows, Mac or Linux, this is the screen that you should see. So I'm going to plug my microSD card in to my computer. So with my microSD card installed, I can now click on Raspberry Pi device and choose device. So I'm going to select Raspberry Pi 5. And then we're going to choose operating system. So I'm choosing the default option, which is the Raspberry Pi OS 64-bit version. Now this will download the Raspberry Pi OS 64-bit version image directly from the internet. So we should see in here the microSD card that we've just connected. So select that and click Next. Now you can apply customization at this point directly to the Raspberry Pi OS, so you don't have to run through the settings. But for the purpose of this video, I'm going to choose No and set it up manually. So click No. Now at this point, it's really important to note that everything on your microSD card is going to be erased. So please make sure that you've backed up any important data from this microSD card before using it for this process. So we're going to click Yes. Now this will start the process of downloading the Raspberry Pi operating system from the internet and then installing it on our microSD card. So we'll come back when that's done. Now when the Raspberry Pi image application has finished preparing our microSD card, you should get a message like this. Now at this point you can click Continue and remove the microSD card from the computer. So we're going to remove the microSD card from the computer and plug it into the Raspberry Pi. To insert our microSD card into the Raspberry Pi, we'll just flip it over and then insert it into the slot like this, and it should go in without much force. Now we need to connect up the other cables that we need. So let's connect up our Ethernet connector and then our keyboard into one of the USB 2 slots. Now we need to insert our power connector, which is USB-C. And finally, we need to connect the micro HDMI cable. So with those done, we're ready to start our Raspberry Pi. We can turn the Raspberry Pi on by pressing the new power switch here. Notice it has a built-in status LED that lets us know the current power state. So when we start the Raspberry Pi for the first time, we'll see this loading screen. After a few moments, we'll be at the Raspberry Pi setup screen. So now we need to click Next, and we can choose our keyboard layout and country. These are all fine for me, so I'm going to select Next. Now we need to create a user account. So type username in here. And when we've done that, we need to type password and confirm. And then we can click Next. Now on this page you can set up your Wi-Fi connection. Just select your connection and enter the password. So I'm using Ethernet, so I'm going to click Skip for this. Now we get to choose our default web browser. We can have either Chromium or Firefox. Firefox is my preferred browser, so I'm going to select that one and click Next. And now we can choose to install our software updates. I'm going to skip this option just so I can show you what the updates look like when you do them in your Raspberry Pi operating system. And also, we can also get to the desktop faster using this option. And finally, we need to click Restart to restart into our new Raspberry Pi desktop. Now with the setup complete, we have rebooted into our Raspberry Pi desktop. Now as we skipped installing updates during setup, we should really install them now. Now as I said, I skipped the updates just so I could show you what happens when you do have updates on your Raspberry Pi. So what happens is you get this icon here, and if you click on this, you can choose to show updates or install the updates. So if we click show updates, it will show you all the updates that need to be installed. As this is a fresh install, there's quite a few. So we'll click install, and we'll now download and install all of our updates. and we'll allow that to complete and we'll come back when that's done. Now we have our updates complete, there's a couple of settings that I'm going to change. The first one, for the sake of this video, is I'm going to change the wallpaper. There's nothing particularly wrong with it, but it's a little distracting when you're trying to do things. So if we right click on our desktop and choose desktop preferences, and we can change full screen with image to no image, and then we can set a colour, so we'll set this blue colour here and choose select and OK. So there are a couple of settings I usually change on a new Raspberry Pi desktop, and I'll show you what these are now. So we'll click on the applications menu and go to preferences and Raspberry Pi configuration. The first setting that I usually change is auto login. This defaults to enabled, so what this means is when you turn your Raspberry Pi on, it will automatically log you into the desktop. Usually this isn't a good thing for me, so I'm going to turn it off. And what that means is when you turn on your Raspberry Pi next time, you'll be shown the login window rather than going straight to the desktop. Another thing that I usually change is I want to connect this Raspberry Pi using the command line from another computer on my network. So to do that, I need to enable SSH. So if we go to the Interfaces tab and enable the SSH option, we can now connect to this device from another computer using SSH. Similarly, if you want to connect this device using VNC for a graphical display, you can enable that one too, but I don't need that right now. So I'm going to click OK and save those settings. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install a couple of applications that I usually use. So again, I'll go to the applications menu and preferences, and I'm going to go to recommended software. So when this application loads, it will show some of the recommended software. Now, one of the things that I usually install is Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to tick that and press apply. And when I do that, the application will be downloaded and installed. Now, an additional thing that I do on a Raspberry Pi desktop is install Pi Apps. Pi Apps is a sort of app store, but for Raspberry Pi applications. It's really useful, and I generally install it on every Raspberry Pi desktop that I use. It's up to you whether you want to do this, but I would really recommend having a look, if nothing else first, and deciding if it's right for you or not. The installation is fairly straightforward, so let's do that now. So we'll go to this website, Pi Apps, and we'll click on Install Now, and it'll take us to this page here. Now it gives us this command to install it, but I would generally never recommend downloading something and sending it straight to Bash. I would always just download the script first by selecting the URL and then copying, and then I'll take it to our terminal where we can go wget and we can paste the URL link in there and download it there. Now wget has downloaded this script for us, and now we can look at the script before we run it. As I said, I would never generally download the script straight into Bash to run like that, because you never really know what's in there. But I'm just recommending that it's better to always check first. So now we have our script downloaded, we can go to our file manager and we can open the install script up. Now this really is an optional step, but with the installer script open, we could check it over to make sure it does what we expect it to do. But I trust this, so I'm going to install it. So we're going to run this and go cat install and pipe that into Bash. And this will download any dependencies that we might need, and then it will install Pi Apps and create a desktop icon for us. So now the installation is complete, let's minimise these windows, and we can see we've got a new Pi Apps icon on our desktop. So let's double click the Pi Apps icon to start, and when we do start it, you'll see this message here, and we need to click execute to start the main application, and it will load in the Pi Apps main menu. So what we can see here is a list of categories, and if we select one, for instance, we'll choose multimedia, and we can see there's a whole list of applications that we can install. So we'll choose Audacity, for example, and a little information about Audacity will pop up. So we'll go back and we'll choose engineering, for example, and we'll choose Cura for our 3D printer. And again, it shows us a little information about the application. So let's install an application. So let's go to multimedia and let's choose Audacity because I want that installed on my Pi, and we'll click install. Now Pi Apps will go through installing this application in this terminal window behind, and when it's complete it will automatically close the terminal window. So now it's complete, we can wait for this to automatically close or we can close it ourselves, and now we've got Audacity installed. As you can see, it's gone green. There's lots of applications in here and it's worth having a look, and I definitely recommend having a look at the Pi Apps website and the GitHub page just to make sure you're comfortable with how it all works. So finally, what's my opinion on the Pi 5? Well, it's definitely an improvement over the Pi 4, and the improved CPU benchmark does show this. The new PCI Express connector is a welcome addition, and it does open up the possibilities for new expansions. So would I recommend buying a Pi 5? Well, that all depends on whether you have a Pi 4 already. If you do, then I'm not 100% sure you'll need to upgrade unless you really need more performance or one of the new connectors. But that said, if you don't have a Pi 4, then it's definitely worth a look. The CPU performance improvement over Pi 3s and older is a huge and really noticeable change. And one of the best new features is the power button. It's a great addition, if not a little late to the party. However, once it's in the official case, the button can be a little tricky to press, especially if you happen to have longer nails. The Pi 5 is more power hungry, and you'll need a good quality USB-C power adapter that can output 5 amps to get the best performance. It also seems to run a little warmer than the Pi 4, so active cooling is probably a must. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video informative and helpful. Please consider subscribing if you can, it will be much appreciated. See you soon!